Hello, my name is Jennifer Falastini, and I formerly went by Jennifer Nesbitt, and I was part of the Green Group during the Research Methodologies class. And this is my Action Research Project. The first thing to think about when we're starting an Action Research Project is to think, what is a major problem that I'm facing in my classroom? Well, it wasn't hard for me to figure that out since I'd been dealing with behavior problems all year long. I found myself thinking, what could I really do to help with classroom disturbances? And classroom disturbances I was finding wasn't happening during small group or individualized instruction. It was really happening during the one whole group instruction time that we have during the day in my first grade classroom. Because I teach primary grades, we do most of our lessons in small group instruction. Our one whole group instruction is during our math block for 45 minutes. So first I started with a needs assessment, a 5-point Likert survey, and voice recorded interviews. First I collected quantitative data by means of a student survey to gather more information on how the students feel about the subject of study. The survey consisted of 15 questions, rating 1 never to 5 always. Some example questions on the survey were, I find myself out of my chair at least once during whole group instruction. My teacher reminds me to raise my hand and not call out during whole group instruction. I bother someone else during whole group instruction, or I find myself easily distracted when the teacher has to stop and address undesirable behavior. Here are some of the findings. 60% of students who took the survey stated that someone else always bothers them during whole group instruction. 35% of students admitted to always bothering someone else during whole group instruction, either on purpose or on accident. And 100% of students said a 4 or a 5, meaning that they almost always or always get distracted when the teacher stops to correct undesirable behavior. Here is an example of the Classroom Disturbances Self-Reflection Survey that was geared to help the students self-reflect on their behaviors and choices that they make during whole group math instruction in our classroom. Let's see some more detailed information on the answers provided by the students on the survey. If you'd like to pause the video now, you can read the graph provided here. The next graph is a percentage breakdown of the previous bar graph that you just looked at. This shows a high trend in students, over 40% mostly answering always or a 5 on the Likert scale survey. Next, we started to gather qualitative data by means of a small focus group interviews. Since my classroom is made up of first graders, I selected 5 students that caused the most behavior problems in the class to help answer 10 open-ended questions. Some of the question examples are, what types of disturbances bother you during whole group instruction? What types of things do you do to bother others? What types of things do you wish that we did more of during the day? And if we could have a reward for meeting a goal, do you think the class would behave better? Why or why not? And what types of things do you think would motivate yourself and your classmates to making good choices during the day? Here are the 2 major findings that I found. 2 trends, one being that students are being bothered during whole group instruction, and that the students are willing to work towards a reward. A few things became very clear after the data needs assessment. One being that there's definitely a problem going on in the classroom recognized by the teacher. The second thing is that students also recognize that there is a problem with classroom disturbances and behaviors during our whole group instruction, and also that students are willing to work towards a common goal with the teacher and the classroom to create a more harmonious learning environment. So I started thinking about what has happened in the past, what past procedures have worked, and what have not worked. And then I thought about the success that I've had with my student who has an emotional behavior disorder. And that was a 15-minute checkpoint contingency program that kept the student on positive behavior for 6 consecutive weeks. What we did was, as a unit, myself and the student, we would create a goal for the student to reach for the end of the day. Every 15 minutes, we would check in on the goal. Yes, they have good behavior, or no, they don't have good behavior. So then I was thinking to myself, could I put the whole group on a similar plan? And that's when I thought of my research question of study. Can a whole group contingency checkpoint plan help to decrease classroom behavior problems and increase student time on task? This has proven to work over time, and it's geared towards students who need to learn how to act in the classroom, who are not getting that at a home environment like most students do. That brings me to the next point, is understanding the demographic breakdown of the students that I serve. The school that I serve is in inner city Fort Lauderdale, where 100% of students qualify for free and reduced breakfast and lunch. And so that gives you a little bit of understanding of the population we're working with. Most of the students that come into school are lacking their necessary human needs, as according to Maslow's theory of the hierarchy of human needs. And so you need to understand the home lives that the students come from. Learned social behaviors that generally are taught at home are now needing to be taught in school in inner city environments. So that's what this intervention is kind of geared towards, is teaching students what's appropriate versus what is not appropriate. And it's also important to remember that the students that I have are exposed to constant stimuli, instant gratification, and are coming from a world of bargaining and negotiation. And that's when I found through the review of literature that a lot of studies have found that students in environments such as these need to first be taught how to become self-motivated intrinsically by means of extrinsic motivation. So it's okay to start with extrinsic motivation as long as you start teaching those students what is intrinsic motivation, since they're not getting that from their home environment. After reviewing several other studies, I found 2 common themes. Students will disturb the teacher and peers by means of verbal disturbances and/or nonverbal disturbances. And positive behavior plans can be and have been proven effective in decreasing student disturbances if conducted properly and appropriately by the teacher using scaffolding and consistency. Now on to my action research plan. So since my implementation of an intervention is specific and has not been implemented before, it's considered a pilot intervention. So the intervention is based off the 15-minute checkpoint contingency plan that is going to be modeled after the individualized behavior plan that I had briefly talked about before. Basically what happens is the group will set a goal for the 45-minute block. For every 15 minutes, the class gets a yes or a no indicated on a chart that's posted on the board. For example, the students might set a goal for the first 15 minutes to not have any more than 5 classroom disturbances. For every disturbance, like calling out of seat, and bullying, this class would get a tally mark. If the students met their goal, they would get a yes and they would get a brain break. If they did not meet the goal, they'd get a no and work towards the next goal. The action plan would start off with gathering baseline data by means of detailed anecdotal notes, recording the verbal and nonverbal classroom disturbances and students' time on task at 5-minute intervals during a 45-minute math block for 4 consecutive observation times before implementing the intervention plan. I would then implement the intervention for the whole group and record the behaviors and time on task. Then we would analyze the data after several days and make adjustments. After the data and findings are graphed, we would then move on to phase 2 of the implementation and adjust any other factors that we find need adjusting. My experiences with the action research plan: I actually got to perform the pilot study that I just described. So before I implemented the intervention, I did a baseline assessment over 4 days and found that on average during the 45-minute math block there were 70 to 80 verbal and nonverbal classroom disturbances. So that was a big deal, and once we implemented the intervention plan, we found that the students were way more motivated because there was a common goal and an incentive, and classroom disruptions went down to only 10 to 15 disruptions for the first 3 days, and then it went down to 5 to 8 classroom disruptions in a 5-minute block for the last 2 weeks of school. And so that was an awesome success for all of us. We all felt very good about it, and the whole action research process has allowed me as a teacher to look at my own practice and become more aware of things that I can change to become a better educator and to help my students be more successful in the learning process. So this has been a wonderful learning experience, and I will continue to work on action research throughout my teaching career.